All right, guys, today, let's talk about death, baby. Let's talk about you and me. That is what we are going to talk about how you can talk about death and it actually be a conversation that creates bonding with your loved ones. We're going to continue our series today with one of my Elevate 360 mastermind members, Jean Hanson, and she has a business called Founder of Pathways Life. And what you're going to hear about today from her, and you're going to want to tune in, is around how we can be proactive and strategic about planning in advance with life events with our loved ones, not only just to be organized so that in the stressful moments of stress, we have everything buttoned up and prepared, but also how we can approach specifically death from a different lens of it being a bonding conversation, a nurturing conversation that it's not scary. It's not something we're afraid of. It's actually a healthy, nurturing conversation that we can have. So today you're going to hear from Jean and how her life experience has brought her to being the expert in advising and consulting with clients, not only around life circumstances like death, but also children with special needs and how you can set up life and process so that it makes life easier with life transitions for everyone. So can't wait for you guys to dial in and listen to this episode today. Need some effective, tactical advice that actually helps you get results and makes a real difference in your life and business? You've come to the right place. If you're finding yourself here today, it means you're getting ready to gain serious traction in your business, rapidly multiply your income and impact, and you're ready to make it happen while living all out. Guys, I'm Melissa Hinault, your trustworthy corporate dropout turned six-figure business burnout turned happy and healthy CEO of a multi-million-dollar online business. And you're listening to the Burnout to All Out podcast. On this show, we're serving up innovative growth strategies, simple implementation methods to put them into practice, and action-stimulating inspiration tailored specifically for the modern entrepreneur. Let's dive in. All right, guys, we are back again with another Elevate 360 podcast episode with one of our amazing clients, Jean Hanson, who is the CEO of Founder of Pathways Life. Jean, I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast today.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes, I can't wait to really hear a little bit more about your journey and your story to where you are today. We were just talking earlier today about how niche you can get with what you do.
Yeah.
And you've gotten really niche. And I think part of it is from past experience. And we're always talking about the journey that we go on becomes many times our purpose.
Yeah.
So why don't we start there with your journey into entrepreneurship and your calling into what you're doing today? Can you talk a little bit about your past and current life that have led you to take a leap, have a calling to initiate this incredible business that you're putting together here this year?
Well, sure. So, first of all, I grew up in a large family.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the oldest daughter. I have an older brother, but if you're the oldest daughter, you're the oldest kid. Doesn't matter. So, but I had a younger sister who had disability. Mm-hmm. And so my whole life I have spent being an advocate for her and just helping her and helping my parents with her. Mm-hmm. And so when it came time for my parents to come up with a will or a trust, mm-hmm. they came to my brother and I and said, would you be the trustees? And part of that meant really understanding what happens to Angela, my sister with the disability, when my parents die. And so we said, sure. And so we learned all the stuff. And every year we would go and we would meet the attorneys and learn all the things and what my parents wanted. And then during COVID, right before COVID hit, we went to the attorney and we had another meeting. And all of a sudden I started talking to my mom and I said, I know the stuff that's in the trust, but I said, I don't know where everything else is. I don't know where your medical insurance is. I don't know where your passwords are to finances. I don't even know like where you keep your checkbook and all those things. Mm-hmm. And so we started going through that and I realized there was nothing anywhere online where I could just pick this and pull that and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I started just sort of thinking about it. And as I started to put all this stuff together with my parents, I thought, wow, there's kind of an idea here for a business. And so that's where I got started doing with what I'm doing today. And it's really more about having people think about a plan for the unexpected. It's not necessarily about dying, even though that's part of it, but it's really the unexpected. It could be a medical emergency, unexpected healthcare crisis. It could be if you're going off on vacation with your significant other and you're leaving the kids with grandparents or family. Do they have all the information they need should something unexpected? So that's what I try and get people to think about.
Yeah, it's a great point. Actually, we were in Punta Cana a couple of months ago, and one of our friends who was there has 4 boys, and they were with her parents, and one of them broke an arm while they were out of the country.
Yeah.
And there was no legal documentation that the grandparents had any authority for medical directive.
Yeah.
And it was a nightmare. They were on the phone for hours, like totally ruined, like probably 2 full days of their vacation.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that was right before Jake and I went to Ireland. And you know what we did?
Got a POA.
Yes, we did.
Yes. Power of attorney. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. So important. You don't think about those things. You know?
Yes.
Even when your child goes off to college, you're like all so happy. And I ask people, do you know your password to your kid's phone? Not that you're going to go in and check, but everything is on the phone. So if you just have the password. Yeah. So interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
So wild. So I love this journey that you have been on that has made you recognize the need for this. Can you share with us some scenarios, or let's talk through, I know I just shared with you my own scenario, but I know a lot of listeners are sitting here going, I should do that, just like me. But I didn't actually do it until I witnessed my friend's vacation literally be ruined for 2 days of being on the phone, trying to get the paperwork, trying to just totally stressed. How do you get people's attention that doing the action and getting organized now is worth the time? Why now? Sell me on that.
Well, why now is because, just like what you said, if you have the plan in place when you go off on vacation, you're not spending 2 days calling somebody and saying, oh my gosh, I need this, I need that. And the sooner that you start, the easier it is, because you don't have to necessarily have everything done all at once. In fact, when I work with people, I'm like the accountability coach. I'm like, all right, we want to get the plan in place. How long do you want to get it done? We can do, I try not to let people go more than 2 months because otherwise let's face it, who sits around and thinks, I'm going to work on my plan today for life if something happens to me or healthcare directive. But usually what happens is somebody will go in for surgery and they'll go, okay, I need a healthcare directive. And I'm like, okay, but do you have the other things? Do you have the POA? Somebody needs to get into your checkbook, maybe, or your checking account. Maybe they just need to pay bills for a little bit. Do they know that? And so it's just sort of this whole process and stuff.
If you feel like you're screaming into the void when you post content on Facebook or Instagram, struggling to find a sustainable and scalable lead generation process that sticks, and you just want someone who's been there and done that to reveal their secrets, then it's critical that you register to save your spot ASAP. During this live masterclass, you'll get to steal the exact strategy I used to scale my income from $0 to $1 million in just 19 months without spending a fortune on ads or suffering from burnout. Simply check out the show notes of the podcast episode for the link to register for your free spot in the LinkedIn Lead Gen Masterclass. And don't worry, even if you miss a couple of days or you can't make it to all the training sessions, we'll deliver the replays directly into your inbox daily so you can watch them on your own time. All you have to do is make sure you sign up for the masterclass before registration ends.
And the other thing too, I think, is when something unexpected happens, or when somebody dies, you are in the process of grief. And if you don't have the plan in place, or if the family doesn't have the plan in place, they don't have the information, now they have all the stress that they have to go through on top of grief. And so it just makes a sad situation even worse. And so it's not something that people like to think of, but what I try to tell people is we're not talking about dying here. We're talking about living. And if you can get these things in place, you can really then focus on living and knowing that when that time comes, your intentions are there, your legacy will be there. And so it's really just about getting it done. And it's such a sense of relief for you. And if you don't want to do it for you, think about doing it for your family.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So true. What's interesting, I had kind of this light bulb moment, and maybe you've already thought about this, but when you were talking about when you're already in the thought process because you have to create some type of initiative going into surgery, have you thought about, because I was just thinking about this, I don't even know how it was initiated. We were meeting with our financial planner. And at some point in that year, he said that we really needed to create some life insurance and it wasn't even just life insurance. It was a will that we needed to write. And I don't know if you've looked into this, some type of collaboration with either advisors who are advising their clients to do this or attorneys who are facilitating it. But I remember it being kind of a morbid exercise to go through. And I'm just thinking in parallel of already working through this, how seamless it would have been to work alongside you and like check all those boxes at one time instead of going back and doing some of that stuff again.
Well, two things. The first thing is that when I work with people, I try and meet them where they're at. So it's like, where do you want to start? We don't have to start with the will. We don't have to start with who's going to be the guardian of your kids. Let's just start simple. But let's get the homework done, come back, let's tackle the next thing. So it can be not so overwhelming. So that's the first piece, meet them where they're at. The other piece that I always like to tell people is I never thought I'd be having these conversations that I have with my parents because we've done the work. And so not only when you do the work does it make you just have that sense of relief, but it really starts to build this sense of connection with family and parents that you really wouldn't have felt before. So one of the stories that I love to tell with my parents, COVID, I take them to go get their vaccination, first vaccination. We're all excited, go get ice cream, celebrating getting their shot.
Right.
Just everybody remembers those days. And my mom says, well, we need to stop at the funeral home because we have a couple of papers to sign. And again, I knew my parents' wishes, so there was no surprise there. And I said, okay, fine, you guys go in. I'm just going to sit in the car and wait. So I'm sitting there waiting. My dad motions to me. He's like, they're telling my mom some stuff. You should probably come in and listen. So I said, okay. So I walk in. They're telling me that if my parents should die 100 more miles from where they live, they'll cremate them there, transport their ashes to wherever their service is going to be. And I said, okay, that sounds good. My mom's like, we're going to be a few more minutes because I got to sign some papers. And so I said, okay. So I look back behind the funeral director and here's this big room of urns. And so I looked at my dad and I said, Dad, let's go take a look and stuff. And so we will go back and take a look. And I said, there's shelves, like hundreds of urns. And I'm looking there and thinking, gosh, did I ever think I was going to be standing in this urn store with my dad? Who thinks of that? So anyway, I said, well, what one would you choose? Well, my dad was in the Navy. And so he picked this beautifully white ceramic urn with the Navy seal on it. And so I said, oh my gosh, that was great. And so then a couple urns down, there's this really bright orange one. Well, I grew up in Curveballs, and Curveballs is home Oregon State. And the mascot is a beaver. And so my mom is a huge beaver fan. Like when I come and visit her, she's watching OSU. She's got the headphones on, and TV, got her t-shirt on and everything. And so the orange urn has an OSU beaver on it. And I said to my dad, I said, look, this is the one that mom would choose. And so we both laughed at that. And the point being is that we had such a connection and it was just a memory and stuff. But then even since that time, just this last weekend, I was talking to my folks and I was telling my mom, she was reading my chapter in our book and she loved it. And so we were talking about that a little bit more. And I said, I was telling on the summit the story of the urn. And I said, I bet you didn't even know this. And so I said, I walk into the room with Dad and she goes, and he picked the Navy one, right? And I'm like, how'd you know that? And she goes, well, I just know your dad. They've been married, I don't know, almost 60 years, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway, then I said, yeah, then I'm pointing one I think that you would pick. And she goes, the Oregon State one, right? I'm like, how did you know that? And so again, we're laughing so hard. And later I thought, those are memories I'll always have.
Yeah.
And it was because we've been over the years having these conversations about all the things that they want and the legacy they're going to want. And so those are just ways that we've really bonded through this whole process. And so it can be hard to get started, but it can really lead people to a place of, now I can talk to them about their funerals and it feels okay.
And I can imagine that it creates this safe space of talking to the truth of what's to come for all of us. Yeah. It's not doomsday. It's just reality.
Yeah.
All humans die. So why not have a heartfelt conversation about it beforehand so that you feel rest assured and everything's in place when your loved one does pass. And I love that whole bonding experience. But you do more than just transitions in life with death.
Yep.
I know that we've talked about you doing transitions in life in other aspects too. So can you speak a little bit to how your brand has branched out?
Yeah, so I've spent a lot of my career working with families of children with intellectual disability through work at Special Olympics and also with my sister. And then I also have a child with a learning disability. So I've spent a lot of time in that world too. And so when I started working with some parents about just getting a life plan in place, they said, we have so many. We don't even know what we don't know about when our child turns 16 because there's a lot of different decisions about health, employment, living, all the things for their child with intellectual disability. So I said, okay, what about doing a course and stuff? So they said, sure, could you do a one-day course? And so I created a one-day course now for parents to come. And same thing, it's all planning. And this just happens to be how to help them. But this part really brings me joy too, because I feel like being a parent, a lot of times you're just in the thing, just doing whatever. So to have somebody just be able to be outside of that and say, look at this, or let me show you that, or have you thought about this? They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know. So it just brings me great joy to know that it's helping ease their overwhelm and give them answers that they didn't necessarily have the sort of the bandwidth to think about right now.
Yeah. I love this. So how does the onboarding process look like for you? So for people who are listening and they're like, gosh, I really need this in my life. I don't have the time, but what would this look like to work with Jean to help me create this pathway for my loved one? Like, what does the traditional onboarding and time and process and path, what does it look like?
Well, my new slogan is, let's talk about death, baby. So I want people to not feel fearful about talking about it. And that truly is sort of leaning more into life than talking about death. But the onboarding process is really we just do a call. We then figure out how best we can work together. And then we set up a timeline. We're going to get this done. And I have a blueprint that we work through.
Okay.
And I don't, of course, do the estate or do the will. Some of those, you have attorneys that work with those. And I can sort of give people some suggestions and stuff. But so it's like, okay, by the next time we meet, you're going to have called the attorney. You're going to decide if you're going to do this or this. So that's what it looks like. And then we try and just work through it and have it done within a couple months, no more than a couple months' time. And then sometimes too, they're like, well, I really need to have my parents do this. Would you help us through that? And so, yes. And sometimes they'll have me come in and just have a conversation with the parents to get them more comfortable about places to start. And that's kind of back to the place of, we don't have to start with talking about the will and the trust. We can just start with the easy stuff and just have a conversation. It's really about the connection. It's really more about creating those connections.
Yeah. I love this. What has been the biggest learning curve for you? What would you say to the Jean who started and the Jean who's here today? What's the advice you would give her from where she started?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because earlier when we were talking about sort of the fear and the unknown, just how people get through that. And I think anytime that you try something new, there's always that fear and the unknown. And I would just say you just have to lean into it, and you do it in spite of, you do it because, even if you're afraid, you just take the step. And the thing is that there's always the person or the thing that you need to get you to the next step. Never did I think a year ago I'd be doing a live event with parents or singing on a podcast about death and all the things. But you just do it, and you get the people to support you, and they show up when you need them. And there's something about just taking the step forward and just continuing to grow and stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I often say, when we're feeling really uncomfortable and fearful, we're really just in an unknown space. And when you're in an unknown space, you're just on the edge of expansion. And so I'm like, if you haven't been scared lately, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that. So you've been on this journey in the Elevate 360 Mastermind this year. And as you know, it's all about the 360-degree approach to life, bodies build businesses, the whole gamut. Where do you think you personally have had the biggest transformation in business or life this year?
Wow, that's a loaded question. There's been so much. It's been all great. There's been things I never would have thought that I would have been someone to write a book or a chapter in a book. Because put me in front of a blank sheet of paper and it's like, I just freeze. So that was a huge step forward to do that piece. The summit, putting yourself out there in front of this whole audience and stuff was great. But I also think just the stuff between the ears, just really building
Like what?
up. Like for me, the things that have been, I think, the most life-changing have been the breath work. To just, because I'm the type of person that's, let's just go. We can figure this out. We can move. And in doing some of those breath work and stuff, and then the Enneagram, I learned parts of myself that I didn't really know. And there's parts of myself I wasn't really proud of when I learned them. And going back to my kids and saying, gosh, here I thought I was like cheering you guys on, like, let's go. And they're like, no, that's not what we heard. What we heard is, you're not good enough. You're not trying hard enough. And I was like, oh my God, that's not how I wanted you to feel. So that has been huge for me too.
So did you have those conversations with your kids?
I did.
That's so healing.
I did.
Was it difficult?
Oh, it was difficult for me.
That's one of the hardest things for me to ever do.
To hear what they had to say. Cause I just thought, I'm just telling you guys, like, come on, we got this. And my daughter was like, that's not how the fuck I took it. It was like, you're not doing it good enough. And I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. So we had a really hard, but really healing conversation about that and stuff. And so now I find myself when I feel like I step back and go, okay, that's not what they need. That's not how they need to hear it.
Yes.
So that was huge with my family. But then also when I work with clients too, I remember people don't do things the way I do. And if I just charge through. So the other piece.
What's your Enneagram?
8.
Yes. Sister. Yes.
Well, we got this. Let's go. That's exactly.
Dead everywhere, but done.
Right.
No other way.
That's right. But also what it's taught me is to take time, to take space. And it's okay not to do anything. It's okay just to be like yesterday. I was literally just laying on the couch doing nothing. And I was like, usually I'd feel guilty about that.
Yeah.
But I just felt just nice to do that and stuff.
Yeah.
So
well, you've been busy the past couple of days.
Oh my gosh. Well, this whole summer's been crazy busy and stuff.
Yeah.
So that whole piece just sort of, slow down to speed up.
So some of the things you just hit on, I want to elaborate for our listeners that maybe they're not as privy to. So the Enneagram assessment. Yeah. So our listeners can go look that up. Or Tracy O'Malley is a great resource. She's done all of her training with our clients. Go find her on Instagram. But learning how you innately operate, how you see the world, how you react to the world when you feel under stress, but also learning how those around you behave. I know for me and my team, it was very, very insightful for me to see how my team operates and how I can more effectively communicate with them. So I love that you brought that up just for awareness to basically navigate this world with other people.
Yeah.
Because everybody's not made like us.
No. I wish they were.
I know, right? But then the other thing is that I think that you really hit on is, I know this is something we're really focused on at the beginning of the year with the modern entrepreneur, of those energetically charged relationships. They don't even have to be charged more than leaking based off of past history and our kind of shadow work, I think is what you're speaking to. Yep. And I know in my own instances through breath, I've also identified areas where I was not the perfect parent and I needed to apologize to my children. And I guess where I'm going with this for our listeners who are maybe new to this whole woo space is that when you are in a relationship that has an energetic leak, because for me, I don't know about you, although you said you weren't even really aware, you thought that you were being really helpful. For me, I was actually living with guilt of feeling as though I was that bulldog, like just angry, mad mom, like literally mad mom, like Medusa, for quite some time until I had my third child, quit corporate, turned into a hippie, started my own business. I'm barefoot in a podcast studio in the middle of a Tuesday. And like my whole energy has changed. And I guess where I'm going with this is that for our listeners who are listening right now, if you have relationships that you wake up in the middle of the night and you have some sense of regret, or there's something you're ruminating on about the dynamics of the relationship, we're physically leaking energy versus being able to repair that relationship. And when we're physically leaking that energy, we don't show up as our highest self. We're not serving at our greatest level in business, in family, and life. And so when we can, to your point, address it head on, have those conversations. And like you said, and for 8, it is hard for us to just swallow our pride and listen to someone give us feedback on where maybe from their lens, we didn't do things so great, even though we felt like we had. But how healing has it been for you and your family?
Well, it's been incredibly healing. And so it's led to being able to have more conversations, but also it's just allowed me to learn that piece of myself. Like, I don't have to always charge in and do it this way. Like, let them figure it out.
Yes.
And stuff. And so that's been helpful. And I've told them both, listen, if I'm doing that, tell me. Like, I'm okay and stuff. And so, and it's interesting too, because I had the conversation with my daughter, and then I had the conversation with my son separately. And he was like, you're doing the best you could with what you had.
Did they both say that?
They did.
Okay.
My daughter was like, like that was not helpful.
Yes.
So
oh my gosh. So you and I had a very, very similar experience, except it was the opposite.
Okay.
My daughter was like, oh, Mom, you were doing the best you could. You were trying to start a business and you were still in corporate, and it's okay. And my son was like, you were an asshole.
Like
you should apologize. Right? That was a tough conversation.
Yeah.
But you have to be ready to receive that. When you open up for apology, it's not for you to receive some type of acceptance, or you have to be prepared that the receiving end may receive it or not, and you have to be open to their response. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
right?
Makes sense. And I think the hardest part for me was the realization that that's how I was being perceived. But having that conversation, it was very freeing for me, because it was like, they're going to respond how they're going to respond and stuff. But I also wanted them to know that we make mistakes and it's okay. And we're always learning, we're always growing and stuff. So.
And what an example you have given for your children, that I think that it's a problem in society today that we have this expectation that our children are perfect because we display as though we do nothing wrong. And so I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know for me, it was one of the hardest things for me to do, to like swallow my ego and tell a child that I was wrong. But what you've done for your children in listening to their perception of you is, and apologizing, is demonstrating to them that it's okay not to be perfect. As a matter of fact, I'm being honest with you right now that I'm not perfect. And you're like paving such a beautiful path for your children to have that same, what's the word I want to use? Like humility or humbleness of like being okay with not being perfect. Because I think that's where the problem starts. Yeah. And I'm sure with you and I as eights, it's like there's this wall where we have to be right and we have to be perfect. Yeah. Probably instilled in us from a young age. Mm-hmm. Because I know my parents never said, I'm sorry, I was wrong, ever.
Yeah, no, the words I heard too often either.
No. Yeah. And so what an incredible gift at any age to be able to have that conversation.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest takeaways for me for this year, was just being able to learn that about myself and share it with my children. So. Yeah. And then I think, to sum this all up too, I think part of the reason too, the work that I do, I think people get to the place where they might regret and have thoughts about they didn't get to do this or they didn't get to do that. And so and I've learned a lot this year too, just to live fully and be present, and whatever happens, happens. But at least I'm just trying to be here and now today.
Yes. So good. Well, Jean, this has been so good. What do you have going on that people can get their hands on to connect with you and learn more?
Well, on my website, I have a checklist that people can just grab for free, just to sort of go through and check what they have or what they don't have.
Where do they go to get it?
They can get it on my LinkedIn page, so Jean Hanson on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, which is pathwaysinlife.com.
And what will the checklist do for them?
It will be a starting point.
Okay.
And they can see where maybe they've got some stuff started and they can feel good about that. Mm-hmm. Maybe stuff that they need to do and stuff they haven't even thought about. So it's just a kind of a place to assess and see. And then they can reach out to me. There's a place on LinkedIn where they can get on a call and we just see what they need and how I can help and, maybe make the process not so overwhelming.
Awesome. I love this, Jean. I love that the work you're doing to foster the relationships, to have the difficult conversations, make them not difficult, and make them nurturing and an opportunity to connect. So glad to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. And I just got to say, I want to thank you for all that I've gotten from this Elevate 360. It has been truly a life-changing year. So I'm excited. It's still got 4 months left. So.
Yes. Yes, I know. You're talking like it's over.
That's right. Now we still got live events.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's around the corner.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So,
well, it's been so fun seeing your personal growth, your growth in business, and just what's ahead.
thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. All right.
Thanks, guys, so much for listening in on today's podcast episode. And I can't wait for you to see my upcoming guest in the next episode. You are going to love this keynote speaker. Hey, here's the deal. If you liked this, please subscribe and leave a review. And you want the latest online business growth strategies and exclusive LinkedIn pro tips sent straight to your phone? Text the word update to 704-318-2285. That is, text the word update to 704-318-2285. Can't wait to see you guys. Come find me over on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you like to hang. Cannot wait to hear how you are enjoying and applying what you're learning. You guys reach out to me over on social because I love hearing what's resonating with you. When you reach out to me and you send me those personal DMs, they really do impact the content I continue to bring forward to you. So again, come find me, Melissa_Hinault over on Instagram, Melissa Hinault over on LinkedIn and Facebook. Can't wait to see you guys over there.